The first punch landed square on my jaw, a crack that echoed through the humid Chicago gym. I stumbled back, tasting blood, but my eyes locked on Theo Carver, me rival. My nightmare. My problem. By some cruel twist of fate, he was also the man who'd turned my world upside down 9 months ago, and I was carrying his secret inside me. I'm Elias Kane, 28, a scrappy community organizer with a chip on my shoulder and a knack for pissing off the right people. Theo, 30, is everything I'm not: polished, privileged, a corporate lawyer with a smirk that could cut glass. We'd been at each other's throats since college, when he outed me to our debate team in a calculated move to win a championship. I never forgave him. But last summer, at a mutual friend's rooftop party, too many drinks and years of pent-up rage led to a night neither of us could take back. Now, I was pregnant, something I'd kept hidden from everyone, especially him. The gym was our battleground tonight, a charity boxing match for the youth center I ran. Theo, of course, had signed up to support the cause, but I knew better. He was here to prove he could still get under my skin. I dodged his next swing, my heart pounding not just from the fight, but from the secret swelling beneath my loose-fitting shirt. Male pregnancy wasn't common, but it wasn't unheard of in 2025, thanks to medical advancements. Still, I wasn't ready for the world or Theodo. No. Getting slow. Kane, Theo taunted, his blue eyes glinting under the fluorescent lights. His blonde hair was slicked back, damp with sweat, and his lean frame moved with infuriating confidence. I threw a jab, connecting with his shoulder, but he barely flinched. The crowd roared, oblivious to the real stakes. "Shut up and fight," I growled, circling him. My body ached, not just from his hits, but from the weight of what I hadn't told him. Every day, I wrestled with the decision: keep the baby, raise it alone, and never let Theo know, or face the chaos of telling him. He'd probably laugh, call it a scandal, and walk away. That's what Theo Carver did, win at all costs and leave the mess for someone else. The bell rang, ending the round. I retreated to my corner, gulping water, my mind racing. I'd moved to a new apartment in Logan Square to avoid him, but Chicago wasn't big enough to outrun fate. Last week, I'd frozen in the grocery store when I saw him in the produce aisle, picking out avocados like he belonged in my neighborhood. Worse, I'd heard he was looking for a place nearby. The thought of him being close, maybe even next door, made my stomach twist, and not just because of the baby. As the next round began, Theo's gaze softened for a split second, like he saw something in me he hadn't before. "You okay, Elias?" he asked, low enough that the crowd couldn't hear. It wasn't concern, it couldn't be. Not from him. "Fine," I snapped, throwing a weak punch to cover my unease. But I wasn't fine. I was terrified. Terrified of him finding out, of what it would mean for my life, my work, my heart. Because as much as I hated Theo Carver, that night last summer hadn't just been a mistake. It had been electric, undeniable, and a part of me still burned for him. The match ended in a draw, the crowd cheering for both of us. I ripped off my gloves, avoiding Theo's stare as he lingered near the ring. "Good fight," he said, his voice softer than usual. I didn't respond, just grabbed my bag and headed for the exit. I needed air, space, anything to keep him from seeing the truth in my eyes. Outside, the autumn night was crisp, the streets alive with the hum of Chicago. I leaned against a brick wall, catching my breath, when I heard footsteps. Theo stood there, his coat slung over one shoulder, his expression unreadable. "You've been dodging me for months," he said. "What's going on, Elias?" "Nothing," I lied, my hand instinctively brushing my stomach. He stepped closer, and I felt the air shift, heavy with everything unsaid. I wanted to hate him, to push him away, but his presence stirred something deeper, something I couldn't afford to feel. "I'm not buying it," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. "You're hiding something." My heart stopped. He couldn't know. Not yet. Not ever. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized this wasn't just about the baby. It was about us 12 men who'd spent years tearing each other apart, only to find ourselves tangled in something bigger than hate. I turned and walked away, but I knew this was far from over. That night, I lay awake in my small apartment, the city's glow filtering through my window. My hand rested on my stomach, feeling the faint kick of the life growing inside me. I'd always wanted a family, but not like this, not with Theo Carver's shadow looming over it. I'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes, learning early that love was a risk. Now, I was risking everything for a child I already loved, even if it meant carrying this secret alone. The next morning, I got the call that changed everything. My landlord, a chatty woman named Mrs. Delgado, sounded flustered. "Elias, you've got a new neighbor moving in next door. Nice guy? Lawyer type. Says he knows you." My blood ran cold. "What's his name?" "Theo Carver," she said brightly. "Moved in this morning." I dropped the phone, my heart pounding. Theo. Here. In my building. My sanctuary. I rushed to the window, peering through the blinds. Sure enough, there he was, unloading boxes from a sleek black SUV, his laughter carrying up to my floor as he joked with the movers. He looked happy, like he belonged here, like he was invading my life all over again. I spent the day avoiding him, but fate had other plans. That evening, I was fumbling with my keys at my door when Theo appeared in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine. "Housewarming gift," he said, that infuriating smirk back in place. "Figured we could bury the hatchet. Neighbor." I wanted to slam the door in his face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the way his eyes lingered on me, like he was searching for answers I wasn't ready to give. "Fine," I muttered, letting him in. It was a mistake, but I was tired of running. We sat on my thrift store couch, the wine untouched between us. The silence was heavy, charged with years of rivalry and one reckless night. "Why are you here, Theo?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He leaned back, studying me. "Maybe I'm tired of fighting you," he said. "Maybe I want to know why you've been shutting me out since last summer." I swallowed hard, my hand twitching toward my stomach. He didn't know. He couldn't. But as he looked at me, his usual arrogance replaced by something softer, I felt the walls I'd built start to crack. This was Theo Carver, me enemy. My mistake. And now, my neighbor. And somehow, against every instinct, I wanted him to stay. The wine bottle sat like a silent judge on my coffee table, its label peeling slightly under the dim light of my living room. Theo Carver, my sworn enemy, was sprawled on my couch, his presence filling the small space like a storm cloud. I couldn't shake the feeling that letting him in was the worst decision I'd made since that night last summer. "You gonna drink that or just stare at it?" Theo asked, his voice teasing but laced with something heavier. His blonde hair was mussed from the move, and his tailored shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimpse of the man I'd tried so hard to forget. I shifted uncomfortably, hyper-aware of the secret I was hiding beneath my oversized sweater. "I don't drink much these days," I said, dodging his gaze. The truth was, I couldn't not with a baby on the way. But Theo didn't need to know that. Not now. Not ever. He raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. "Since when?" "You were knocking back whiskey like a pro at Marla's party." His mention of that night hit like a punch, and my stomach clenched. I could still feel the heat of his hands, the reckless abandon of that rooftop, the way we'd collided like stars burning out. I pushed the memory down, focusing on the present. "People change," I said curtly, standing to put distance between us. My apartment felt too small with him in it, his cologne mixing with the faint scent of paint and old wood. I busied myself in the kitchenette, grabbing a glass of water, anything to avoid those piercing blue eyes. Theo followed me, leaning against the counter. You've been weird since that night. Elias. Distant. I thought we. He trailed off. And for the first time, I saw a crack in his usual confidence. I thought we connected. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Connected? You mean the part where we screwed up and pretended it never happened? Or the part where you've been a thorn in my side since college? He flinched, but didn't back down. I was a jerk back then. Okay. I know it. But I'm not that guy anymore. And I don't think you're the same Elias who'd rather punch me than talk. I wanted to argue, to throw every grievance I had at him. But he was right. I wasn't the same. I was carrying his child, a secret that changed everything. And now, with him living next door, I couldn't escape Heimer the pull I still felt. Despite everything, the next few weeks were a blur of avoidance and tension. Theo was everywhere, jogging in the park where I walked to clear my head, grabbing coffee at the corner shop I loved, even volunteering at the youth center I ran. It was like he was trying to infiltrate my life, and I hated how much I didn't hate it. He'd show up with donuts for the kids, charm the staff with his easy smile, and ask me questions about my work like he actually cared. I kept him at arm's length, but every interaction chipped away at my resolve. One evening, I was locking up the youth center when Theo appeared, carrying a stack of books. Donated these for the library corner, he said, setting them on a table. The titles were perfect graphic novels, queer history, books on identity and resilience. I hated how thoughtful it was. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice tight. You don't care about this place. You're just, what? Trying to mess with me. He stepped closer, his expression serious. I'm not messing with you. Elias, I see what you do here. How much it means to these kids. To you. I want to be part of it. I shook my head, my chest tight. You don't get to just waltz in and act like you belong. You don't know me. Then let me, he said, his voice low, earnest. Let me in, Elias. I'm not your enemy anymore. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the secret I carried was a wall between us, one I wasn't ready to tear down. I turned away, muttering something about work, and left him standing there. But as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Theo was seeing Miralai seeing me for the first time. That night, I dreamed of the baby, a little boy with Theo's blue eyes and my stubborn jaw, laughing in a park I didn't recognize. I woke up with tears on my face, the weight of my decision heavier than ever. I couldn't keep this from Theo forever, but telling him felt like handing him a grenade. Would he fight me for the child? Walk away? Or worse, stay out of obligation? The next day, I was at the youth center when a crisis hit. One of the kids, a 15-year-old named Jaden, had run away from his foster home after a fight. I spent hours searching the neighborhood, my heart in my throat. Jaden was like me at that age, angry, lost, but full of potential if someone just gave him a chance. When I finally found him, huddled in an alley, I sat with him, listening as he poured out his fears of never belonging. You belong here, I told him, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. With us. With me. Jaden nodded, wiping his eyes, and I felt a surge of purpose. This was why I did what I did, why I fought for these kids, why I couldn't let my personal chaos spill into their lives. But when I looked up, Theo was there, leaning against a wall, watching us. He'd followed me, helped search, and now he was looking at me like I was someone worth knowing. You're good with him, Theo said later, as we walked back to the center. You're good with all of them. They're my family, I said simply. They're all I've got. He stopped walking, his hand brushing mine. You've got more than that, Elias. You just don't see it yet. My breath caught, and for a moment, I let myself imagine a world where Theo wasn't my rival, where he was part of my life, part of our life. But the weight of my secret snapped me back to reality. I pulled away, muttering an excuse, and headed home alone. The weeks bled into each other, and Theo's presence became a constant hum in my life. He was there in the mornings, offering me coffee as I left for the youth center. He was there at night, knocking on my door with takeout, claiming he'd ordered too much. I told myself I was keeping him at a distance, but the truth was, I was letting him in, inch by inch, and it scared me to death. My body was changing, too. At 7 months pregnant, hiding it was harder. I wore baggy clothes, avoided tight spaces, and prayed no one noticed the way I moved differently. The youth center staff, my chosen family, knew something was up but didn't pry. They respected my silence. But Theo wasn't so easily deterred. His questions grew sharper, his glances longer, and I knew he was piecing things together. One rainy afternoon, I was at the center, helping Jaden with a school project, when Theo walked in, soaked from the storm. He shook out his umbrella, his eyes finding mine across the room. "Need a hand?" he asked, nodding at the pile of art supplies. "We're fine," I said, but Jaden grinned and waved him over. "Traitor." Theo sat with us, his sleeves rolled up, helping Jaden glue paper cutouts onto a poster about identity. I watched him, stunned by how natural he was with the kids, how he listened to Jaden's rambling stories without a hint of impatience. It was a side of Theo I'd never seen in college, when he'd been all sharp edges and ambition. Now, he was human, and it was messing with my head. "You're good at this," I said later, as we cleaned up. The center was quiet, the kids gone home, the rain drumming against the windows. Theo shrugged, but his smile was soft. I had a good teacher. I rolled my eyes, but my heart wasn't in it. "Don't get sappy on me, Carver." He laughed, then grew serious. "I mean it, Elias. You make a difference here. It's inspiring." The word hit me harder than I expected. Inspiring. No one had ever called me that, not in the way he meant it. I turned away, busying myself with stacking chairs, but Theo grabbed my arm gently. "Hey, talk to me. What's going on with you?" I froze, his touch burning through me. My secret was a scream in my throat, but I couldn't let it out. "Not yet. Nothing's going on," I lied, pulling away. But as I did, my sweater caught on a chair, lifting just enough to reveal the curve of my stomach. Theo's eyes widened, and time stopped. "Elias," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Are you?" I yanked my sweater down, my face burning. "It's nothing. Leave it alone." But Theo wasn't letting it go. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "Elias, are you pregnant?" The room spun. I wanted to run, to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. "It's not your business," I snapped, but my voice cracked, betraying me. "Not my," he stopped, his face paling as the pieces clicked. "That night. It's mine, isn't it?" I couldn't look at him, couldn't speak. The silence was deafening, and when I finally met his eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected, not anger, not denial, but raw, unguarded emotion. "Elias, why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're Theo Carver." I spat, tears stinging my eyes. "You ruin things. You walk away. I couldn't let you ruin this, too." He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't back down. "I'm not walking away," he said, his voice steady. "Not from you. Not from our kid." The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. I wanted to believe him, but trust wasn't something I gave easily, not to him, not to anyone. I turned and walked out into the rain, leaving him standing there, the truth finally out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Theo's words echoed in my head, warring with years of resentment. I'd spent so long hating him, blaming him for every slight, every betrayal. But now, he was here, not just in my building, but in my life. And he wasn't running. Not yet. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. Theo's handwriting. Neat and deliberate. I'm not going anywhere. Let's talk. Please. I crumpled it, then smoothed it out, my hand shaking. I didn't know what I wanted for him to disappear, or for him to prove me wrong. At the youth center, I threw myself into work. But Theo was there, too, helping with a fundraiser. He didn't push, didn't bring up the baby, but his presence was a constant reminder. When we ended up alone in the storage room, sorting decorations, he finally spoke. I'm sorry, he said, his voice quiet. For college. For everything. I was a coward back then, and I hurt you. But I'm here now. Elias. I want to be here for you. For the kid. I stared at him, my walls crumbling. Why now? I asked. Why care now? Because I see you, he said, stepping closer. The real you. The guy who fights for these kids. Who doesn't give up. Who's carrying our child and still standing. I'm not walking away from that. My throat tightened, and before I could stop myself, I was crying. Not just for the baby, or for Theo, but for the years I'd spent guarding my heart, afraid to let anyone in. He reached for me, and I didn't pull away. His arms were warm, steady, and for the first time, I let myself believe he might stay. The days after Theo learned the truth were a tightrope walk. I expected him to bolt, to revert to the selfish jerk I'd known in college. But he didn't. He was there every day, every moment, proving he meant what he said. And it terrified me how much I wanted to believe him. We started talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Late nights in my apartment, over takeout or bad coffee. We unpacked our history. He told me about his own fractured childhood, raised by parents who cared more about status than love. I told him about foster care, about building a family from scratch at the youth center. It wasn't easy, peeling back those layers, but it felt like coming up for air. One night, as we sat on my couch, Theo reached for my hand. I want to be a dad. Elias, he said, his voice raw. Not just a name. I want to be there. For everything. I looked at him, searching for the lie, but all I saw was sincerity. It's not just about you and me. I said, this kid, they're going to need more than promises. I know, he said, his thumb brushing my knuckles. I'm all in. Elias. For you. For them. For us. Us. The word hit like a wave, pulling me under. I'd spent so long fighting alone. I didn't know how to let someone in. But Theo wasn't asking for permission, was already there, carving out a space in my life I hadn't realized I'd left open. As my due date approached, the reality of parenthood loomed. I was scared not just of labor, but of what came after. Could I be a good father? Could Theo? We started preparing together, turning my spare room into a nursery. Theo painted the walls a soft blue, his hands steady despite my constant critiques. We argued over cribs and names, but it felt good, like we were building something real. One evening, we were assembling a rocking chair when Theo paused, looking at me. What if we name him after your dad? He asked. You said he was the only foster parent who really got you. I froze, tears pricking my eyes. I hadn't told Theo much about my dad, just that he'd been a quiet man who taught me to love books before he passed away. The fact that Theo remembered, that he cared enough to suggest it, broke something open in me. I nodded, unable to speak, and he pulled me into a hug. It was the first time I let myself lean into him, fully, without holding back. But life wasn't done throwing curveballs. A week later, I got a call from the youth center. Jaden had been caught stealing from a local shop, and his foster parents were ready to give up on him. I rushed to the police station, Theo at my side, and found Jaden sitting in a chair, his face hard but his eyes scared. We'll figure this out, I told him, kneeling in front of him. You're not alone. Theo spoke to the officer, using his lawyer skills to smooth things over. By the end of the night, Jaden was released to my custody. A temporary fix until we could sort out his placement. As we drove him back to the center, Theo reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone either," he said quietly. That night, Jaden slept on my couch, and Theo stayed over, helping me keep an eye on him. We didn't talk about the future, but it was there. In the way Theo made Jaden laugh. In the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. I was falling for him, and it was as thrilling as it was terrifying. The hospital room was too bright. The beeping machines too loud. But none of it mattered when I heard my son's first cry. Leo, named after my dad, came into the world at 2:17 a.m. A tiny, perfect bundle with Theo's blue eyes and a wail that could wake the dead. Theo was there, holding my hand through every contraction, his face a mix of awe and terror as he cut the cord. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he looked at Leo, then at me. "You're incredible, Elias." I was too exhausted to argue, too overwhelmed to do anything but let him kiss my forehead. Leo was here. Real. Ours. And Theo wasn't running. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Leo was a demanding baby, waking us at all hours. But Theo was there for every feeding, every diaper change. He'd moved most of his things into my apartment. A quiet agreement that neither of us questioned. Jaden, still staying with us while we worked on his foster placement, became Leo's unofficial big brother, his tough exterior melting every time he held the baby. One night, as I rocked Leo to sleep, Theo sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "I love this," he said softly. "You, Leo, Jaden, this, family." I looked at him, my heart full. "You mean that?" "More than anything," he said, and kissed me. It wasn't like that night last summer. All heat and chaos. This was slow, deliberate, a promise sealed in the quiet of our home. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Jaden's foster parents refused to take him back, and the system was failing him. I couldn't let him go to another home, not after everything he'd been through. Theo and I talked it over, late into the night, and decided to apply for permanent guardianship. It was a risk to new parents, a newborn, and a teenager with a rap sheet, but it felt right. The day we got approved, Jaden hugged me, tears in his eyes. "You didn't give up on me," he said. "Never," I told him, and Theo squeezed my hand, his eyes saying the same. Months later, we stood in that Chicago park, the same one from my dream. Leo was in a stroller. Jaden was kicking a soccer ball nearby, and Theo was beside me, his hand in mine. The wooden bridge stretched out before us. Its carved words faded but still there, rivals to lovers. A hidden truth. I smiled, thinking how far we'd come. Theo caught my eye, his smirk softer now, full of love. "You know," he said, "I think I won this round." I laughed, leaning into him. We both did. Our family wasn't perfect. It was messy, complicated, built on secrets and second chances. But it was ours. And as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of gold, I knew we'd fight for it together.